Before I begin, I want to thank Municipal Sewer and Water Magazine and Cole Publishing for having me in today to talk about what might be around the corner for sewer collection systems when this current situation abates and we find ourselves in some place we could hardly imagine just a few months ago. I also want to thank Brad Bisnet and Ann Richmond for helping set up the seminar, and most especially Heather Towsley, who's our Vice President of Marketing, for helping me pull together these thoughts and these slides today. A little backstory on myself and SmartCover. Originally trained as a physicist with more than a decade in defense-oriented activities for companies like SAIC, I stumbled into water by somehow getting elected to a water board in 1990, and I've been reelected a number of times, and now I've been there 30 years. During this period, my board elected me to the San Diego County Water Authority Board of Directors, where I spent 2 terms and served the citizens of the County of San Diego. It was at the San Diego County Board that I met my future business partner, David Drake, a Caltech electrical engineer who worked at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, and David's an actual rocket scientist. Encouraged by our friends in the water industry, we founded SmartCover Systems in 2005, and since then have been fortunate enough to grow the company to more than 450 agency customers in North America, with nearly 5,000 systems installed. According to our customer feedback, SmartCover has been helping our customers prevent more than 25,000 sewer spills since 2005. It's those results that keep us motivated to continue our journey and help others lower costs, lower risk, and improve human health and the environment. Our intention today is to share our experience in water and wastewater agencies from the policy side, the operational side, and the technical side, and hopefully provide some illumination and guidance on how we, as a community, can face the future, given both our current unprecedented circumstances and what lessons we might learn as we eventually look back at what today's world is teaching us. It's our hope that you'll leave today's session with an understanding of the concept of a black swan, an unpredicted and major shock to our routines and daily lives. What lessons can be learned from prior black swans and how we can think about applying those lessons today and tomorrow. How we can improve resilience. And finally, how technology can be leveraged to help us improve our resilience when it comes to recovering from unexpected or untimely disasters. I want to start by introducing to you a great American philosopher, Yogi Berra. You may already be familiar with some of his famous quotes like, "It ain't over until it's over," or "It's like deja vu all over again." Well, there's another quote that's attributed to him, although a little research actually indicates an older primary source. It's tough to make predictions, especially about the future. Well, today we're going to be talking about both predictions and the future. But as we wade into this topic, let's remember the warning provided by Professor Berra. It's tough to make predictions, especially about the future. You may have heard of a black swan, but what exactly is a black swan? Prior to 1697, the Western world believed that all swans were white. Whenever you saw a swan, and wherever you saw a swan, it was white. That was until early Dutch explorers spotted black swans in Australia. So the conclusion, reached after many years of observation, that all swans are white was, in fact, wrong. In 2007, a fellow named Nassim Taleb, a professor at the University of Massachusetts, wrote an astonishing book, which I recommend you take time to read, especially during this current crisis, called The Black Swan. As you might have guessed, the term black swan is really just a metaphor. The subtitle of Taleb's book is The Impact of the Highly Improbable. The Black Swan explores in great depth the concept that we naturally live our lives, run our businesses, operate our utilities, and make daily decisions based on a series of assumptions that generally support the idea that today is pretty much going to be like yesterday, and tomorrow will be pretty much like today. Things change slowly and with a predictable regularity. And this regularity of our daily lives and our expectations builds up unnoticed biases and habits in the way we do things and prepare for the next day, like it was sort of like today. We think we've got it all figured out, and guess what? We don't. Think of the impact of 9/11 and how that's changed the world, a black swan event. The rise of Google and Amazon were also black swans. Who could have predicted these events? So here we are, smack in the middle of a black swan event. Think back to Valentine's Day this year, a little more than 3 months ago. Did you have to worry about how much toilet paper you had in your house? Or were you thinking about waiting in line to get into a grocery store? Or being asked to shelter in place for months? Or not being able to travel to visit relatives and friends for business? So the question is, when this event is over, and of course it will be over, how do we adapt? What lessons did we learn, and what can we expect next? What will the world look like after this particular black swan has moved on? Specifically, how will we be doing our jobs differently? Let me give an example from my past that illustrates how we humans tend to think about the future. I served on the board of directors of the San Diego County Water Authority for 12 years, and during that period, we went through a fierce drought and were faced with severe water delivery cutbacks throughout the county in the early 1990s. Now, droughts are not exactly black swans. In Southern California, where I live, we face widely varying annual rainfall, and as much as the meteorologists try to predict wet versus dry years, they only do an okay job, not a great job. Not only that, but in Southern California, we live in a water cul-de-sac. Our water supply and storage is small, and the majority of our water comes from the Colorado River Basin and the snowpack in the Sierra. So we pray for rain and snow all over the West, but these details must be left for another time. Here's my point. In 2010, the San Diego County Water Authority projected usage in 2020, only 10 years later, based on good data and projections of population growth and economic growth of about 720,000 acre feet. Guess how much water the County of San Diego used in 2019, just last year? 365,000 acre feet, or about half of what was projected just 10 years ago. And I'm thinking that number will shrink even more this year, given our current economic situation. So what happened? Well, there was yet another drought in California in the West, this time for 5 years, starting in 2012 and ending in 2017. But something of a black swan appeared yet again. This time, the governor of California, for the first time in the history of the state of California, declared a water emergency in 2015 and cut back water deliveries to the state suppliers by 25%. This sent a shockwave around the state. The good news is, of course, there was plenty of water to go around for San Diego, as we were anticipating rigorous growth and increased water usage. And we spent more than $2 billion in ratepayer money creating infrastructure to deal with exactly this kind of water supply uncertainty. But we didn't count on or plan on the governor cutting us back 25%, decreasing our revenues and forcing us to raise rates to stay solvent. Another black swan event. So you might be asking by now what the black swans and the water supply situation in San Diego have to do with today's topic of collection system operations in the new normal. I would like to suggest the answer is resilience. Unfortunately, resilience is starting to become something of a buzzword, but it really does describe an important element in dealing with black swans. Well-functioning water and sewer systems are what separates first world societies from the rest of the world. From the times of the Romans, or maybe even earlier, these systems have been the most critical and the least appreciated infrastructure we have. And as stewards of our water delivery and sewer collection and treatment systems, it's up to us to be sure we're providing life-giving and life-protecting services to our constituents. And what is resilience? It's the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, which in the context of today's discussion are the black swans we face, and in particular, the current black swan of the global pandemic. If you think about the elements of a functioning water or wastewater utility, it really only consists of two major parts, the staff and the stuff. The staff are the people part of the business. In order to function properly, we need the right people in the right places at the right times. We do our best to ensure this is the case. The stuff is the physical part of our delivery or collection systems, the pumps, the pipes, the manholes, the valves, the lift stations, the treatment plants. And for the most part, it's the staff that keeps an eye on the stuff. Today, we'll focus on the stuff of wastewater collection systems. Given what we know today, and given what we think may happen in the future, and given after this current pandemic is over, we certainly can expect more black swan events. What can we do to be more resilient? What can we do to recover as quickly as possible? How can we be ready? The first step in disaster recovery is assessment. What is wrong and where is it wrong? How serious are my problems? Can I fix these problems with my existing assets, or do I need to call for help? The next step is triage. How can I prioritize the problems in my system and make the most critical repairs immediately to get my system up to some nominal operational level to provide essential services to my customers? The next steps are to execute the repairs, and the final step before going back to reassessment is to evaluate the effectiveness of my repairs. Is this stuff really working? One aspect of recovery that's often neglected until it's too late is collecting enough good data about the disaster and about the disaster and during the disaster to help with the recovery funds from places like FEMA or the state disaster assistance, and avoiding lawsuits from injured or damaged parties because of the consequence of the disaster, whether or not you or your agency was at fault. But you know what Shakespeare said about lawyers. Today, we'll be focusing on the first and most critical step of the recovery process, assessment. The first thing we have to do after a serious event, black swan or otherwise, is to figure out what's wrong, where the problems are, and how bad the problems are. In order to do this properly, we need to start with a widely dispersed sensing network, lots of sensors and lots of locations. We also need a reliable communications network that's real-time, so data is coming to us quickly and immediately, ubiquitous, so there are no dead zones in our service area, robust in the sense that the communication is always there, even under the most extreme conditions, and redundant, so in case there are any failures, we still get the information. We also don't want to be relying on land-based power to operate our sensors or communication. Power needs to be off-grid and reliable. Local battery power is the answer. Data and decision report from any remote network system must be easy to understand, digest, and act upon. In the heat of an emergency, data needs to be easy to access and simple. Finally, bringing in data from many sources can often help out serious problems from the not so serious situations. We will talk about each of these critical characteristics of a rapid assessment system next. The challenge you face with the collection system is it's big and dispersed. Hard assets like lift stations, manholes, pipes are all over the place, and when disaster strikes, you need to be able to quickly assess what's going on and what needs help. You need lots of sensors in lots of places. We don't have enough staff to watch all our stuff. 15 years ago, this concept was completely foreign. Except for some SCADA sensors, our version of widely dispersed networks was sending folks out in trucks to lay eyes on critical parts of our system, hoping we could pull out the information we need. That's hit and miss for sure. Collection systems have traditionally been an area where there's not a lot of real-time knowledge, except for perhaps lift stations. An example illustrating the need for remote sensing hit us hard in 2011 in Southern California when we had the great Southwest blackout. On a very hot day when the electrical grid was already stressed to the max, a technician in Yuma, Arizona made a mistake at a substation that cascaded through San Diego, Riverside, and Orange County, creating a regional blackout that lasted 13 hours. Yet another black swan. Because traffic lights were not operational, a trip across town that normally takes 10 minutes took an hour. So even in this situation, our staff could not reach our remote assets in a timely manner. Remote sensors would have been great. There were several major sewer spills at lift stations that day. Reliable communications is key for remote sensors. You may have a great widely dispersed set of sensors, but if you can't talk to them, they're useless. That's why we use Iridium for our communications. We started with a terrestrial solution originally because it appeared simpler, but reliability and coverage problems quickly became obvious, and we landed on Iridium. There's also no need to send a ton of data. Remote smart sensors can do a lot of in situ analysis, so the data transmitted can be small and still provide all the information you need. The most important and obvious advantage aspect for resilience about Iridium is it's not on the Earth. Hurricanes or other natural disasters can devastate local wireless communication systems. Iridium works just fine. Another distinct advantage is Iridium is supported by the U.S. Department of Defense. Different generations of wireless communications come and go, like 2G and 3G cell networks, requiring hardware upgrades every time there's a change. Iridium offers long-term stability, no format changes, and is a fully trustworthy backbone for two-way wireless communications to a dispersed network of sensors. When you need it, it is there. The third critical element for a successful rapid assessment system is power. Power to run sensors and power to provide communications. We're all familiar with blackouts that occur under a variety of conditions: electrical storms, windstorms, network errors, like the ones that prompted the 2011 blackout in the Southwest, or for those of you old enough to remember the great blackout of 1965 that knocked out the whole Northeast United States. The point is, especially as a resilient component, we can't count on land power. The obvious solution is batteries. The sensors used in a resilient solution and the communications needed to be optimized to minimize power consumption so batteries can be small and have a long lifetime. We found over the past 15 years, battery technology has improved and primary batteries can be used as a primary battery source for a remote sensing system. Long lifetime, reliable, off the grid. You may remember that scene in The Wizard of Oz when the wizard tells Dorothy and her companions, "Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain." The need for simple data reminds me of that scene. A widely dispersed sensing system used to build and support long-term resilience will, by its nature, be complex. So it's easy to fall into the boiling pot of complexity and get lost in all the data that could be heading your way. It's our goal as a community to resist complex data, and in fact, insist that the directions and decision support provided by a complex system are simple. There will always be complex analytics going on in the background of these sensing systems, but we need to get back to the questions we need answered in a period of required resilience, and that is, what is wrong, where is it wrong, and how bad are my problems? If a widely dispersed sensor network can't answer these questions in a simple way, we have failed. In the middle of an emergency, you don't want to have to phone a friend to figure out what the data is telling you. Analytics needs to be trustworthy, proven to work under non-stressful and stress conditions, and hidden in the background. And we have a term for this called encapsulated analytics. Another feature of your widely dispersed sensor system is you may not have much time to either deploy or reposition sensors. Remember, black swans are not predictable events, so your system needs to be easily and quickly deployed. The last critical element for critical assessment that we're going to address today is data fusion. This may not be obvious at first, but how sewer collection systems respond to outside events like rainstorms, snow melts, tides, and river levels affects how well we respond when our next black swan shows up. The basic reason is outside effects can have serious impacts on our systems, and our natural enemy in the world of sanitary sewers, for example, inflow and infiltration, is a common example. Part of the resilience response is knowing beforehand how your system responds to outside functions. Once your widely dispersed sensor system is in place, and while waiting for the next black swan to show up, you can monitor and learn from how your system responds to these outside functions and preemptively prepare before the crisis arrives. Our last set of topics will be examples of how these 5 critical elements of assessment have been applied in real-life situations. This first example from a utility in the San Diego region shows how remote monitoring reduces risk and multiplies manpower during a crisis. A month ago, we helped a sewer agency partner in Southern California deploy an emergency monitor at a lift station on the influent side of a treatment plant. At the beginning of this global crisis, this agency decided to increase pump station inspection frequency from once weekly to 2 times a day. This was in response to the increase of risk of spills due to rags and wipes instead of toilet paper. Twice a day, a staff member needed to drive by truck 20 minutes each way from the maintenance yard to check to see if there were any problems. The frequency of inspection would even be higher during a wet weather event. Now, a real-time monitoring device, completely off the grid, powered by battery, and using highly robust satellite communications, provides the same or better information than a manual inspection. This system sends immediate alarms and alerts for water levels that exceed thresholds. This agency now can relieve the staff member of the 2-time daily visits so they can do something more productive, and they have plenty to do. This is a great example of how remote monitoring can relieve pressure on strained staffing during this difficult time. This utility, located near the LAX airport in Los Angeles, installed real-time remote monitoring systems in their lift stations as an off-the-grid backup in case of an emergency. They had an emergency. Their black swan event was a very drunk driver knocking down 2 power poles at 2 a.m. on New Year's Day morning. The loss of power to their 7 lift stations caused the loss of power and communications to their lift stations, but they had off-the-grid backup. Using real-time data provided to their smartphones, they were able to triage the situation and position generators at the right locations to avoid any lift station overflows. We were told after the incident, instead of writing spill reports, they were able to enjoy the bowl games on New Year's Day. At this South Florida utility, a remote monitoring system was set up at a large number of collection system and lift station locations, using the Iridium satellite backbone as the communication system. The chart on the lower right shows the water level for 4 monitored sites. The rainfall from Hurricane Irma is shown in purple. While Irma was an unusual storm, it did not drop a tremendous amount of rain. The wind and storm surge was ferocious, and they knocked down towers throughout southern Florida. Cell communication was down for 2 weeks. During this period, the monitoring system that depended on Iridium worked flawlessly and provided continuous and real-time data throughout the duration of Irma, giving the collection system operators real-time visibility into their system before, during, and after the storm. This example shows how a drainage district used remote monitoring to semi-automate water levels in drainage canals to avoid flooding. This is another example from South Florida, also related to Hurricane Irma. There were several days of warning before Hurricane Irma arrived in South Florida. Previously, this district staff used staff and trucks with binoculars to monitor water levels, but obviously not in real time. Using remote monitoring, this district was able to lower water levels, monitor these levels in real time, and respond as the storm approached and hit the area to avoid any flooding. The district manager called this application of technology revolutionary. Here's yet another example of the ease and simplicity of installation of remote monitoring systems, this time from a public service announcement from the city of Arlington, Texas.
Hey everybody, it's Jay Warren with another On the Clock. You know, we're always putting technology to work here in the American Dream City, like our new smart manhole covers. Here's City Manager Trey Yelverton with the Arlington Water Utilities team to learn more about this project.
Thanks, Jay. Today I'm out at River Legacy Park East, and I'm here with one of our graduate engineers, Brendan Hamilton, who works in our water utility department. Tell me a little bit about what we're going to look at today.
Today we'll be installing a SmartCover. This is a device that allows us to see the manhole depth or the flow depth within a manhole. This allows us to get out ahead of time, have advance notice, just in case it is starting to back up. We can get our guys out here before any issues happen.
Okay, and so these covers would then potentially give us access down to a line to clear a clog or something like that. That's really their purpose, is to let us get down in there?
Yes, they're at any size change, any bend, really any place things could get caught up to give us access to fix any problems if they were to happen.
This technology, instead of waiting to actually visually see evidence of a backflow, it's indicating to us via their sensors that something is an anomaly and something might need to get out here and check on it before a backflow actually occurs.
Because it's checking not only backflow, it's checking the level as it changes. So it can actually tell us a bit ahead of time before it even becomes an emergency. We can actually plan to come out here and remedy the situation potentially a week before.
So now we're going to attach, I heard you call it a smart cover. Is that
Yes.
Is that what they're called? The unit that's
The unit that goes underneath, yes, is a smart cover.
Okay.
This right here is our sonar, effectively the sonic sensor. It's things kind of like that, listens.
Well, now that we have the unit actually put together, I'm here with Jason Fowler, who's an asset information analyst with our water utility department, who's going to help us install this equipment actually into the lid. So tell me how we're going to do that.
We will drill into the lid and we will install the brackets that we need.
So the equipment will just essentially hang off that hole that we're going to drill and bracket it.
Yes, sir.
It'll drape down from that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, let's get to going.
We move to the bracket itself. Perfect. This just slides down. At this point, we're ready to shut it. Everything's been installed.
Okay, those are up. So it looks like we're sending our signal via the satellite to the cloud. So the smart cover is now monitoring the flow under the water. So it looks like our work here today is done, but on behalf of all of our residents, I want to appreciate you guys for all the work that you're doing, being smart and helping use technology, put technology to work to help us save money and have a better environment. So thank you for all you guys are doing.
Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Trey, and thanks to you at home for watching. Tune in next time for another On the Clock.
I apologize for the complexity of this slide. The idea is to illustrate all the components that influence a collection system, whether it be a sanitary system or a combined system. It takes a while to absorb the whole thing, so I'll be brief. The inputs are on top, and they include everything from raw sewage to other external influences like tides, streams, and rainfall. Each of these components can have an impact on the operations of a collection system. I don't have time today to discuss each of these components in detail, but the important takeaway here is that there can be many monitoring points indicated by the red M dots. Each of these monitoring points are possible, and they can lend a great deal of knowledge of the operations of the whole system. The more you monitor, the more you know. The more you know, the more resilient you can be. And the more resilient you can be, the better you can be prepared for the next black swan that arrives at your or our door. Remote monitoring to this level can go a long way to helping us gain increased resiliency and fight off the black swans of the future. We start our discussion today with the great American philosopher Yogi Berra. And oh yeah, he was a baseball player too. So I wanted to conclude with another one of his profound, and in this case, relevant and true thoughts. The future ain't what it used to be. The more we recognize this, the more we can be prepared for whatever black swan comes our way. Thank you for listening, and I hope this time was well spent for you.